All right, everybody. Thanks for joining the webinar today. This is Erico Mattos. I am the Greenhouse Lighting and Systems Engineering Consortium. So first of all, I'd like to welcome to the first webinar of the GLASE Webinar Series. The GLASE Consortium Webinar Series is a selection of live recorded online presentations that cover a broad range of topics at varying technical levels and scale. The webinars are hosted by me, GLASE Director Erico Mattos, and a guest speaker, an industry or research expert. These webinars feature the latest technological innovations and best practices in the CEA field, providing the audience the opportunity to discover new solutions to connect with field experts. Today's session will be presented by Amelia Gulkis from NSave. Amelia will talk about funding opportunities for CEA energy efficiency. Amelia has worked on business development, strategic planning, and project management for NSave since 2004, and has been co-owner and chief operating officer since 2010. She is energized by constant innovation within energy efficiency industry and is proud of NSave leading the way for agriculture. A recorded version of this webinar will be available at our website over the next few days, and we would love to hear from you. Because this is the first webinar, I apologize. I didn't know that I should have set up the chat box in advance, which I didn't. So my suggestion for this webinar is for you to send me an email with your question if you have one. So if that's the case, please write down my email, which is em796@Cornell, from Cornell University, .edu. So one more time, my email for questions, em796@Cornell.edu. If you have more questions afterwards, please follow up with me. And Amelia, you have my email I just gave you. Amelia contact gonna be at the end of the presentation. And so we look forward to start the presentation. Amelia, if you don't mind, please go ahead. And thanks for being our presenter today.
All right. Well, Erico, thank you so much for that nice introduction, and thank you for inviting me to present at this first webinar. Can you hear me okay, Erico? And I assume the others can as well?
Yes, everything
okay. Good. Always good to make sure the technology is working for us and not against us in these things. So again, my name is Amelia Gulkis with NSave, and I'm going to be talking today about funding opportunities for energy efficiency for controlled environment agriculture, both a little bit on the state scale for New York in particular, since GLASE is growing out of a New York initiative, but mainly talking about some national opportunities that are open to all CEA growers, and then also talking about our tool called FEAT that is being used to collect data about controlled environment agriculture energy use, and has some nice potential for being used to really further the GLASE mission and help growers better manage their energy. So getting started here, just a little bit about NSave as a company. We've been around for 27 years working with agriculture across the United States. Our core focus has always been energy management and greenhouse gas reduction on the farm, really helping farms of all types become more sustainable and more energy efficient. And we do that in a number of ways, working directly one-on-one with farms through things like energy audits and special consulting services for farms. We also partner with entities like state offices and utility companies across the country to administer energy efficiency programs that would promote energy efficiency to the agricultural sector, and walk farms through the process of installing and receiving incentives for energy efficient equipment. And we're very proud to be a GLASE industry member. We've had the pleasure of meeting Erico and his team about a year ago. And since then, we've had some wonderful discussions, as I'm sure many of you on the call have had, just about the engaging work that GLASE is doing and that all industry members are doing, and we're happy to be a part of that. So in looking at energy efficiency for controlled environment agriculture, I just put some very broad categories of the type of opportunities that can be looked at. Certainly lighting is a big deal. You know, certainly the namesake of GLASE, having an originating lighting focus. Certainly ventilation and heating, as well as things like film and thermal energy curtains, insulation, anything that's addressing heat within a greenhouse as well. And certainly this list is very excitingly growing due to the efforts of the industry and all of the innovation within controlled environment agriculture of just very, you know, minutely controlling that system and making sure it's using as little energy as possible in the process. So to start out, since this is a New York-centric call, I'm not sure exactly who is represented. It's wonderful that we have so many people on the call today. But with GLASE growing out of New York, it's important to mention an important opportunity for all growers, all agriculture that's available currently. It's NYSERDA's Agriculture Energy Efficiency Program, NYSERDA being the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, who is also sponsoring and supporting GLASE. This is a program that's been active for a number of years now, has several hundred participants in it, and it's a pretty good deal because it's always a nice deal when something's free. It's free energy audits for New York agricultural producers, and also offers free technical assistance to access other funding, such as incentives that could be available through your local utility company or perhaps through some other state and federal sources. And it's really focused on using that energy audit as a catalyst to help farms and agriculture as a whole install energy efficiency projects using a variety of funding. And the utilities in New York State offer some support for greenhouse and controlled environment agriculture energy efficiency. And this program can help really connect growers to that funding, because while they might not have something specifically for greenhouses, there's often custom ways or different ways that a grower can participate and get some good funding for a project, particularly on the lighting side. So this is a program that's active right now, and NSave is working alongside NYSERDA in that program to administer it. And so if anybody who's not already a participant in that and is a New York grower here on the phone, we're very happy to talk with you about that program. So now getting into some of the national programs that are available for anybody who might be on the call. There's two major national programs that offer support for energy efficiency on the farm, one of which is the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, or EQIP. And that's a program through the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service, or NRCS. And that's an agency of the U.S. Department of Agriculture that is focused on conservation, and kind of their core originating focus has been kind of the land of a farm, you know, soil conservation, erosion control, nutrient management, those types of things. And since 2008, they have been involved in energy, and we have been alongside this agency as they've grown into offering financial assistance for energy on the farm. And so what's nice about this program is that it provides financial assistance both for energy audits as well as for actually installing projects that are recommended through an energy audit. So what would happen is that the energy audit is kind of the catalyst to unlock that additional funding for a project, because the audit is what tells you whether something is cost effective for your operation and gives the details on how much energy can be saved. And generally speaking, the program covers roughly 50 to 75% of the cost of both the energy audit as well as the cost of the various equipment that they incentivize. So they have it on a per unit dollar figure. It's not on a percentage, but that's kind of their general idea to pay for up to 75% of that equipment. And sometimes it can end up being higher depending on what the payment rate is. And as our company is a technical service provider, as it's called, for this program throughout the United States, that means we have gone through a certification process to be approved to offer energy audits through this program that would enable a grower to receive a payment for that audit. So we can work with anybody on that program to help access funding. And here are some examples. These are pulled from New York's payment schedule of different technologies that are available through the EQIP program. And the way it works is that there is a standardized list of technologies. They do vary state by state. For example, a state that maybe is very dairy intensive, they would have a lot of dairy measures, but a state where there's really not much for dairy, correspondingly, they wouldn't have much for dairy. So for controlled environment agriculture or greenhouses, it certainly varies state to state. Some have a more robust offering than others. But nonetheless, this is an example of some of the things that can be funded through EQIP in New York State. So there's another program called the Rural Energy for America program, and that's through USDA Rural Development, which is another agency of USDA. And they've had this program for a number of years, and it's a little bit more flexible than EQIP because it incentivizes things that are shown to be energy efficient, that it's more on a custom basis. So unlike that previous slide where I showed that list of things, this allows you to have more of a custom project or something that might be perhaps more innovative or more specific to your farm, and that can receive funding through this program. And it does provide both grants and loan guarantees, and it's for farms as well as rural businesses. And it's also available for renewable energy projects, and EQIP is not. That is strictly energy efficiency at this point. But REAP, again, is a little more flexible in that it incentivizes renewable energy. And the grants cover up to 25% of the project cost. And the maximum grant for renewables is $500,000 and $250,000 maximum for energy efficiency. So with those types of caps, you can have a pretty large project and still have 25% of it covered through this program. So the REAP has 2 application periods in the fall and the spring. The spring one just wrapped up, I think, in early May this year, and the fall is generally October. The fall is set aside for projects that have a total cost of $80,000 or less. And really, they've kind of altered the program through the years because they've had a lot of the money sucked up by some very large projects that they specifically set aside a chunk of their funding, in this case, about 35% of their overall funding for projects that are less than that $80,000. So certainly on the energy efficiency side, if you had an upgrade, there's certainly a lot of things that would cost less than $80,000. It's just when you get into the renewables, particularly solar, that things get a little more costly and are more likely to end up in that other category. But it offers a good opportunity for many farms. And then the funding amounts that are available and kind of the competition varies quite a bit depending on what state you're in, and also by kind of the federal allocation each year. There are certain states, California is an example, where it's been very competitive with REAP funding for renewable energy, and there's just been so much taking off there, and there's been so much demand that it kind of ups the ante to make sure the project has to be, very, very attractive in terms of its cost effectiveness for it to be considered. Whereas other states are perpetually really seeking projects and aren't getting the traction that they're looking for, to where somebody could have a very good chance of receiving funding if they put forth a proposal. Some other rules of the program is that the project has to be owned by the participant. There's no lease option, and you have to document how you're going to pay for the remaining 75% of the project, either documenting cash on hand that's in your bank account or documenting a loan or some sort of financing mechanism for that. And project costs can be incurred after the grant is submitted, which is a nice feature because you don't have to wait until you're approved to be able to move forward with something. Because if you have a project that you're looking to do anyway and are just hoping for that grant to kind of sweeten the deal for you, you can go ahead and begin work on that project without waiting to hear if you're accepted. You can do that as soon as the proposal is submitted. And typically in this program, farms and businesses typically hire a third-party grant writer to both develop the application, because it is a fairly cumbersome process with a lot of federal forms and some length to it, and also a third party such as NSave for providing an energy audit or a technical evaluation of the project to be able to define what the energy savings or energy generation possibility is out of that. And so that's also a service we provide. If there are people interested in going after this source of funding, that's an area where we can help out and help navigate that process too. So some things that we can do on a custom basis that might be of interest to some of you on the phone. There are utility incentives throughout the country that might be available on a custom basis, where you would have to have some sort of an engineering study done or have some sort of proof of the technology. And that could well be the case for some of the more innovative technologies that are going into some of the controlled environment agriculture facilities. We can help with evaluating those custom utility incentives and helping to navigate through that process. There's also other grants out there for agriculture in general, not necessarily always with an efficiency or an environmental bent, but for example, there's the Value Added Producer Grant, which offers funding for a farm that's looking to enhance its production or add another line of business. That's something where we can help farms access funding through grant development and helping navigate some of the federal forms and things like that. There's also an opportunity with developing new incentives for federal and utility programs. I was referencing in a few slides ago the EQIP program, where it has the prescribed list of technologies. That is, certainly great if you have a technology that is on that list, but if you have something custom, you might not be able to get anything. There's a process where you can create what they call an interim standard for a technology for something that you're documenting the efficiency of and documenting the ability that it would in fact generate the savings you're claiming. That's something that we can assist on from a technical perspective, and that's something that presents a nice opportunity for GLASE as they look to expand the availability of funding for some of the innovative lighting technologies that are just coming on board. And then also from time to time, there's grants available that demonstrate an innovative approach or an innovative technology. It might be they're looking to bring underutilized or newly commercialized technologies to market. They could be looking to bring a technology from another sector into the agriculture sector. And that's something where they might be, the funder might be looking for proof of energy savings or for some metering of the energy savings or otherwise documenting that the technology indeed saves energy. And that's something that we can be involved in as well in terms of partnering with growers on certain things. So next up, I'm going to talk a little bit about the FEAT tool, which is something that GLASE has developed to collect information about energy use metrics on the farm, as well as the basic crop metrics. And the idea behind this is to have a portal that growers can use to both input their information and kind of keep that data organized, but also to ultimately collect that data from several facilities so that it can be used to draw some conclusions in general about where energy is used in the controlled environment agriculture sector, and allow some benchmarking to take place to kind of see what is and where is the energy being used, and then what are the most efficient producers doing differently on their operations, and growers can see how they might stack up in terms of their energy use to somebody who is in a very similar situation, same size, same schedule, same crop, but sometimes that guy down the road might be using a considerably lower amount of energy. And so when that's the case, it's always important to better understand why that is and kind of get yourself to that same good energy efficient level. And so these next few slides are just a few screenshots of the tool. And it's a simple one-page data entry screen where I kind of have the top third of the page here shown, where you can see there's a spot to select the crop, a little pull-down menu there. GLASE developed kind of the major categories that people would fall into. So you can choose your crop. And then further down, you would see where you would begin entering a little bit of information on the energy using systems. So here's a pull down menu for lighting, for example, where you would choose what type of lighting you have, your number of fixtures, your wattage, and that type of thing. And then in this little tab right down below, you can see for the HVAC system with your heating system and what that entails. So it's really recording that data of what you're using. And then at the bottom, that's where we would put in the kind of the non-energy information. Well, I guess actually starting, there's some information on the electricity. So you would be entering in your monthly energy use for electricity, and then going into the details of the crop in terms of your cycle, your units, the value of that crop, and then information on the building itself with you can see just the top of that with ventilation capacity, humidity ranges, and things like that that allow us to really understand the situation of the building in addition to the energy that's being used within it. So wrapping up, that's really the information I wanted to share today. There's plenty of time for questions. I know Erico has a system where folks might have sent in some questions. And just to say that if you are interested in using the FEAT tool to collect your data and to help with that energy benchmarking, please do contact Erico because he's your first contact for that. And then if you're interested in general outside of this call and any of the things I've discussed, I've included our contact information below with both our main 800 number, our website, and then my direct email address. And as well, just a question that came up just earlier today, we have been looking at doing some projects in California. And so if there's anybody on the phone who is either in California or serving the California market, perhaps as a manufacturer or distributor, we would certainly love to hear from you offline and ask you a couple questions. But other than that, I'll open it up at this point back to Erico and for any questions folks might have.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Amelia. Great presentation. We did receive a few questions. Before I read them, for the people that joined the call later on, let me say this one more time. If you have any questions, please send by email to me. My email is emsmary796@cornell.edu. So, Amelia, a few questions that I got here by email. First one, I think, is a simple, straightforward. Does NSave provide services beyond New York? You just mentioned California, but do you offer services that you mentioned beyond, I guess, New York and California?
Yes, absolutely. We work on a national basis. And what I mentioned earlier about being a technical service provider for the EQIP program, that is something that we offer on a national basis, and the rest of our services as well nationally.
Perfect. Excellent. Another question I have here from lighting manufacturers related to the process that you mentioned with the applications with the USDA. They're asking, can light companies lead this process? So I think what I'm understanding here is that if the whole application, it needs to come from the greenhouse grower, or can lighting companies work with the greenhouse growers or CEA growers in general to lead that and apply for these grants?
Right. So if it's the REAP program in particular that does offer the grants, then the manufacturer can certainly be involved. The one thing that they can't do is they can't provide the technical documentation for the proposal, because that has to come from an independent third party, as it's called. And so that's where NSave or somebody like us would come in, because there could be a conflict of interest of the manufacturer having a financial stake in the outcome of that grant, and that's what USDA is trying to avoid, of having a third party come in and do kind of that neutral evaluation of having the numbers. But certainly, if there are manufacturers that are working with people, it certainly makes sense to talk to us about who is in your queue for a project, and we can work through the manufacturer to be able to help that end customer with an application. Perfect.
The second question that I got from lighting manufacturers is how to qualify as an approved vendor. So does lighting companies or any other technology do they have to qualify to become one of these recommended new energy efficient technologies? And just to complement this question, now coming from me, the DLC, the Design Lighting Consortium, is about to publish their guidelines for lighting energy rebates. So then can or should or is there anything that lighting companies needs to do so their hardware is qualified for these projects that you mentioned, or as of today is just a comparison versus the traditional high pressure sodium technology?
Right. So if I'm understanding the question correctly, it sounds like that manufacturer wanted to know if they could be an approved vendor or something of that ilk. And so to take kind of the programs apart one by one, for the EQIP program, the financial assistance is based on the technology itself, not on any particular vendor. So in that little list I shared, if they're offering financial assistance for this particular wattage of LED lighting, anybody who meets that specification would be able to participate. There wouldn't necessarily be a pre-approved list of vendors. But I did mention in my presentation about the interim standard, which is for a technology that's not yet on the list. And indeed, a manufacturer could be part of that process. The idea is that, because USDA as well as NSave are interested in the attributes and the energy efficiency of the technology itself, and not necessarily, a particular vendor or manufacturer per se. It would have to be somewhat neutral in that it would, the interim standard would, it wouldn't mention the manufacturer by name, but it would reference that particular technology. And if it's something that there is only one manufacturer who does that technology, then that's one thing. But for some, it could be that there's an interim standard for a particular technology, and there might be a few manufacturers who fall within that. And that's something that we can help with in terms of helping navigate that process with the USDA, just because we are familiar with some of the ins and outs of that process and how they operate.
Perfect.
So I hope that was helpful to whoever asked the question. And since we don't have the ability as much to have the verbal questions, if there's any ambiguity or if I didn't answer the question correctly, please contact me offline at that number or the email I provided, and we're certainly happy to follow up with anyone.
And that was a good segue for the next question that we received, which is, I think, might be from a sensing and control company, or that's, I think, is the intention. So with the customer system that you mentioned, for technologies that are not, there are new technologies being developed. So if a new sensing and control technology is available and is proved to provide savings to growers, can those technologies be part of the rebate? Would they qualify if something new is not necessarily a lighting fixture, but could be a new controller? And that would be now a segue I would complement with GLASE as well. Because like you mentioned on the presentation, Amelia, with GLASE developing new technologies, when they are ready to go to market, probably we're not going to have any commercial application to showcase and show the proven benefits in previous, several greenhouses, several applications. So in these cases, the question is twofold here. First, the one they receive, which is specifically for sensing and controls. So if there is any new sensing and control technology that offer energy savings, can they qualify for that? And then the second one coming from GLASE, from me, would be technologies without a track record, so without years to prove the data, things that are brand new. Can they qualify under this customer assistance program or this category?
Right. Well, let me take the question, I guess, part by part. In terms of the question about the controllers, and again, it kind of depends which program you're talking about. With EQIP, it is much more of a, that prescribed process where you would have to go through that interim standard process to be able to get that controller approved if it's not already on their list. For REAP, again, that's the one that's a little bit more flexible, where it would really be documenting the engineering calculations of that product, and perhaps providing some literature on it to be able to convince USDA that yes, indeed, this is saving energy, and here's how it does that, and being able to have us provide those the calculations and documentation for that. And to answer your question, Erico, about things that are unproven or don't have a track record, you know, there's kind of different places where things can fit depending on how commercialized something is. If it doesn't have a track record yet, it's probably unlikely to be in EQIP, because they would want to have some further documentation. But that's where it could be that we could work together to look at funding that's intended for things that haven't been proven out, because there is funding available through, you know, could be through utilities or through state energy offices, maybe through the U.S. Department of Energy and such, that they're looking to prove out concepts. That if you have something that you've developed, but it hasn't been tested in the field, there's funding available out there for field testing to be able to establish that that record of savings across a few pilot sites. And that's kind of something that's more on a case-by-case basis, in terms of looking at what the technology is, looking at what funding might currently be out there for it, and kind of going from there to develop something on a custom basis.
Oh, that's great. That's new for me. I didn't know about that. I think that could be a great value for other members of the GLASE Consortium, having this three-leg with the research institutions, with a company like NSave and the other rebate programs offering this funding available, and then the new technological innovations from these companies that could tie together really well and apply for funding and bring new technologies to market. So thanks for letting us know about that. Great information. So Amelia, another question. Now, I don't have any more questions coming from my email. So a question that I have now is a little bit more, talk a little bit more about FIT. I don't think we told people on the line that GLASE members, so CEA GLASE members, could be greenhouse growers, indoor farmers, urban growers, they would have access to the basic model of FIT that is shown on screen. So with that said, saying that people can have access to that, if we could go a little bit more into the benefits of FIT. So you explain that we can track the energy consumption, and that's what we had in mind as well. You talk about the benchmark GLASE as a, with our educational efforts and activities. By providing that, we could provide a lot of information and educate our growers on where they are, which technologies they could improve, comparing to their peers, and everything done anonymously. So I think that's the part that I would like to talk to you. Just explain folks on the line that when we get this data, we are not sharing their data with the rest of the world. So he can compare his data with a benchmark, which would be anonymous, right? They don't know who are the other growers. So if you can just clarify this point to make clear for the people on the line that would not be a concern.
Yeah, thank you, Erico, because that is a good point that I did not address, and it's an important one for everybody, that yes, you're correct, it is anonymous. So I could see certainly somebody having reservations about entering all this data about the intricacies of their business operation, and it has their name attached, and somebody else could look and say, oh, you know, it's this farm here, and this is what they're doing. Because that certainly can be considered competitively sensitive or just otherwise sensitive data. But in this situation, it is all anonymized, and any kind of data analysis we do on this is all going to be, you know, anonymous, because we're really focused not so much on the specifics of a particular operation. It's more we're interested in the data of that operation. And, you know, we're certainly interested in the operation in terms of how we could work specifically with you, but we're not, and how GLASE can work specifically with you, but we're not interested in sharing your details with anybody else.
Great, thanks for clarifying that. Amelia, I think I'm I got the questions read. I made my few questions along the way. If there's anything you would like to mention, everybody, as a closing statement, feel free to do that. Just before you take the word, just let people know on the call here that the next GLASE webinar will be about lighting labels. So the Design Lighting Consortium will announce their recommendations in a few months. And working on this direction, the GLASE Consortium has established a similar partnership we had with NSave. We established a partnership with Intertech, which is a third-party certified laboratory that can do lighting analysis. And we will be pushing for the use and publication of the lighting label published by AJ both for horticultural applications. So lighting companies that are part of the GLASE Consortium will receive a complimentary free analysis. So it's a whole full analysis on their lighting fixtures if they feel comfortable, if they want. They will receive a complimentary free analysis from Intertech, which is the third-party certified laboratory. So that makes a connection with this webinar where we see about opportunities on energy efficiency. Next one would be how to compare and how to understand the lighting label, how to compare different light fixtures as a grower point of view. So then you have a fair comparison and you can shop around the lights and find which one is better for you. So with that said, Amelia, I don't have more questions. If you have more comments or any closing remarks, anything else you want to talk about you and NSave, please do so. And from now, already in advance, thanks for the seminar. It was great.
Okay, well, thank you, Erico, for the opportunity to talk to everybody today, and thanks to all those on the line for taking some time out of your day to participate. It's great hearing the questions and helping to answer them. It sounds like there's some good interest in exploring some of these things further. And again, with that contact information that's up there on the last slide, or if you are out of the slide for some reason, you can certainly go to our website, EnSave, ENSAVE.com. We'd love to be able to hear from anybody with further questions or further ideas. And we look forward to listening to what Intertech has to say too. That sounds really intriguing as well. So thanks, everybody.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Amelia. Thanks, everybody, for joining the webinar. And I look forward to see all of you again in about 1 month during the second webinar. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Have a good day. Thank you. Bye-bye.